22nd to the 23rd of February, 1899, 125 years ago. Content warning. This reenactment includes depictions of violence and sensitive language. Evening, 22nd of February, 1899. Following the outbreak of the Philippine-American War on the 4th of February, 1899, the Americans steadily advanced outward from Intramuros, driving the Philippine Army out of its defenses around Manila. On the 10th of February, Filipino forces were driven from the town of Caloocan, where the Americans halted their advance and set up a new line of defense to prevent the Filipinos from attacking Manila. From his headquarters at Polo, north of Manila, General Antonio Luna had been preparing his forces for a major counterattack to retake Manila from the Americans. A key part of this counterattack was a bold plan for large numbers of soldiers to infiltrate the Manila suburbs behind the American lines, link up with local Santa Tahanes militiamen, and wreak havoc on rear-line U.S. Army forces. On the evening of the 22nd of February, Philippine Army forces under the command of Colonel Francisco Paco Roman stealthily bypassed the U.S. front lines via the marshes near Caloocan, as well as by boats that access the coast and rivers near Manila. This large force of Filipinos had successfully infiltrated behind the U.S. lines and prepared to strike in coordination with an offensive by other Philippine Army battalions in the north. Garrisoned at Tondo were two companies of the 13th Minnesota Volunteer Infantry Regiment, which was assigned to provost or police duty in the district. Some of their soldiers had been complaining about being assigned to garrison the rear lines for policing duties instead of fighting on the front. These men were about to experience the most intense urban fighting of the war. Late in the evening of 22 February, while most of the American soldiers were asleep, the infiltrating Filipino soldiers donned their uniforms, gathered their hidden weapons, and prepared to execute their attack. Fires began to break out in Tondo and other districts, possibly started by Filipino forces to suffocate the Americans with smoke, to cause chaos and confusion amongst the U.S. troops garrisoned in Manila. The fire causes an electricity disruption, plunging the district into semi-darkness, with only the burning buildings for light. The Manila Fire Brigade was called to help extinguish the fires, while the American forces reorganized to repel Filipino attacks and disruptions on the fire brigades. In the confusion of the darkness and fires, the Filipinos took up their positions and began firing on Americans and the fire brigades. Company C of the 13th Minnesota set up blocking positions at Paseo de Azcaraga, Calle Lemery, and Calle Ilaya at the southern edge of Tondo to prevent the Filipinos from advancing further. Soon after, the Filipinos made direct attacks on the barracks of the Minnesotan companies at Tondo, engaging them at Calle Lemery and Tondo Church as the fire engulfed other parts of the district. While the American forces were occupied in controlling the spread of the fires and defending their positions, the bulk of Colonel Roman's forces set up barricades at key positions to receive the impending American counterattack. On the morning of February 23rd, the companies of the 13th Minnesota were joined by the other Provost Guard companies from the 2nd Oregon and 23rd U.S. Infantry to begin their attack to drive the Filipino forces under Colonel Roman out of Tondo. Fighting lasted for hours from street to street, house to house, and at very close range. The Filipinos made use of the barricades and houses for cover, sometimes waiting for the Americans to pass before shooting them from behind. However, the Americans slowly but steadily drove Colonel Roman's forces out of their defensive positions. On the 23rd of February, most of the Filipino forces were driven out of Tondo. And although the Americans helped fight fires in Tondo the night before, Mahalaga was setting fire to any houses they found in the outskirts in an effort to smoke out any hiding Filipino soldiers. In the aftermath, the Americans would discover the abandoned positions of the Filipinos littered with riot gear uniforms and rifles, deliberately discarded to give the retreating Filipino soldiers a better chance to blend in among the civilians and escape north to return to Philippine Army lines. The Second Battle of Manila, which included the burning and fighting in the Tondo district, was part of an ambitious and bold counterattack planned by General Antonio Luna and the Philippine Army. The Ejército Filipino, assisted by Sandatahanes militiamen, fought bravely and fiercely against the invaders in and around Manila. But the Philippine Army's weaknesses in communication, training, and logistics ultimately cost them the battle. Luna's envisioned counterattack ultimately failed in its objectives. Filipino forces suffered heavy casualties in the intense fighting. The large-scale infiltration of Tondo and other districts of Manila behind the U.S. battle lines was an impressive military feat which caught the Americans off guard. The Filipinos demonstrated their superior knowledge of the land, their capability to take advantage of it through deceptive and disruptive tactics, and their tenacity in battle. Illusions of a quick American victory in the Philippines were beginning to disappear. However, Filipino civilians also endured heavy toll during the battle, with many losing their homes and belongings to the fires. The Philippine-American War was only just beginning, and it would be a long and brutal conflict for both sides. This concludes the reenactment of the Battle at Tondo during the Second Battle of Manila, which took place on 22 to 23 February 1899. We at Historia Viviente Manila would like to thank our partners and affiliates that helped us bring this chapter of Manila's history to life. The Intramuros Administration, the Siriaco Brigade Tiradores Reenactment Group, and the unaffiliated reenactors who joined us today.
Ano po, sir?